Public comments for items not on the agenda. Anyone want to make a public comment? Okay, we'll move along to the study session on EBOTS.
Good evening, council members. So the Emeryville Berkeley Oakland Transit Study is back with a draft report. As you recall, we went out last fall and asked people what trips they wanted to take and what problems and ideas they had, and then we came back in the spring with some options, which got lots of comments, and we made major changes as a result of that. We ran some preliminary draft recommendations by some groups, and then we now, have a draft report, which has been reviewed by 2 planning commissions and the Emeryville people, and then it's going to go to 2 city councils and 2 transit boards after that. Then we'll get our heads together again and come up with a final report, so we'll see what that says. This report covers transit context, proposed improvements, short, medium, and long term, and evaluates them and talks about funding and implementation. The context is the report assumes that the shuttles, including the Emeryville, continue as planned, and that potential AC transit changes, they might reroute the line 26 to go from central Emeryville on Mandela down to West Oakland BART. And they might split the 49 so that one line goes from Emeryville to Ashby BART and one goes from Emeryville up Dwight to Shattuck. Now that was their thought, and then we've talked about that since, so you'll hear more about that. The Oakland people are doing a study for their Broadway transit project, how to extend and upgrade that, so that's another part of the context. The report recommends some short-term improvements. The bus stop ones we've already been sort of thinking about, adding some stops to the I-80 ramps for the F bus. That's in the Measure B implementation program, I think. And also sprucing up the transit center at San Pablo 40th. This report recommends to AC Transit that they route the new 48 from Ashby BART north to 6th and Gilman, and then the 49 from Emeryville Public Market all the way up to Shattuck and Bancroft at UC Berkeley, 3 blocks from downtown Berkeley BART. And an idea that came up late in the process is that if you extend the F line a block north, it will hit the public market bus hub that AC Transit wants to establish. Sure. Other short-term improvements they're recommending is to connect better to the Berkeley Amtrak by increasing West Berkeley shuttle service and putting a jog in that new 48. In West Oakland, there are a couple of big new developments where people have talked about the potential of shuttle. One is the former Army base, where they're going to have a new logistics center, and a Gateway Park at the foot of the bridge. So that might be a seed where somebody could start putting together a shuttle in West Oakland. And we can encourage use of the AC Transit passes. We can require them when we have development projects near where the AC Transit hubs are. We're already doing some of that. And there's this idea, it's just an idea, of demand response transit, a shuttle that comes, adjusts its route according to who has called in the last few minutes. So maybe that could work for late night coverage. It's an unproven idea. So then the recommendation for 5 to 10 years from now is the trunk line connector enhanced branded bus that would go from Jack London Square on 3rd to West Oakland BART up Mandela and through Emeryville on Hollis, and then up 7th and 6th in Berkeley to the Amtrak station and up to Gilman and over to San Pablo. Some people mentioned the idea of it going to downtown Berkeley, so the report has some text in there about that being an option, maybe if things don't develop around Gilman like we think they will. This would be a hybrid or battery bus. It would operate from 6 to 10 weekends and 6 to 10 weekdays and 7 to 11 weekends. 10-minute frequency except for the beginning and end of the day. To have faster travel, it would have signal priority, and the stops would be about 1,000 feet apart. This is farther apart than most locals, but not as far apart as the Rapid. It's kind of an in-between. To have level boarding, it would require street improvements to make curb extensions, and then getting buses that have a low floor and wide aisle. And then the shelters would have lighting, cameras, benches, trash bins, bike racks, and real-time arrival info. And there would be marketing so people know about it. which has not always happened with some bus routes. And then for the 10 to 20 year period, because if we start now, that's when it would come to fruition, the report recommends streetcars from MacArthur BART into Emeryville and West Oakland. One going both ways on Hollis, Powell, Christie, 64th Shell Mound, and then one in West Oakland on Mandela to the BART station and on 3rd over to Jack London Square. And this one would complete the O that is in the West Oakland specific plan. The Broadway people are studying extending the Broadway shuttle possibly up to 27th Pill Hill, maybe up to 40th, and maybe over to the BART station. So it could be that when this thing happens, it has to go over to Broadway to meet it. The cost estimates, we annualize capital costs and combine them with O&M costs to get a total annualized cost. Because the bus line is longer and the buses have to be paid for in 12 years, that's about $20 million a year. The streetcars, the routes are shorter and the cars and the tracks last longer, so the Emeryville one is about $21 million a year and the West Oakland one is about $14 million a year. That's a lot less scary to look at than the overall capital cost.
Say again, Diana?
It's a lot less scary to look at than the lump sum capital cost when you have 30 years to pay for it. So daily ridership, the trunk line connector enhanced bus would have, we have improved our ridership. They're not quite, our ridership calculations, they're not quite so conservative now. So they're projecting 4,000 to 5,000 new riders on the bus, 5 to 6 on the Emeryville streetcar, and 3 to 4 on the West Oakland streetcar. And of course, reduction in vehicle miles traveled is all proportional to that. The effects on environmental justice communities, if you take a quarter-mile area around our routes, it's almost the same as the percentage of minority and low-income people in the study area. The only reason it's a tiny bit different is because the south part of West Oakland is so wide you can't get a quarter mile around the bus route to cover it all. The report has some ideas for when we get to the design stage about how to make stops visible and bike lanes continuous and reduce the risk from tracks. And the stops would have lights and cameras. All the enhanced bus and the streetcars all overlap parts of AC transit routes and parts of each other. So that could, depending on how much demand there is, lead to a cut in service somewhere, or not implementing new service that some people are thinking about. In terms of economic development potential, all three services would improve access. West Oakland has the most opportunity sites, so they stand to benefit the most from it. We have not found an example of an enhanced bus without its own lane that has leveraged a significant amount of investment. I thought I had, but I found out it has its own lane at rush hour. So not true. So who could run this thing? There could be a Tri-City Joint Powers Authority. There could be a Transportation Association, AC Transit or BART could do it. Maybe one would start and another would take over after a while. The federal Small Starts grant could be used for streetcars. It would have to be supplemented by local revenues from developer fees to parcel taxes, parking taxes, maybe parking revenues, somebody mentioned, local gas taxes, whatever we can come up with. The Transportation Association could have an assessment district, and it's been drawn to my attention that I think Vice Mayor Atkin has been working on the county Measure BB expenditure plan to try to get a footnote for shuttles in there.
It's in there.
All right. I saw it online, but not in the voter guide. So it's happening as we speak. And then AC Transit and BART are eligible for federal formula funding. That's what they partly run on. And AC Transit sells easy passes, and of course they're set up to take fares already. So there's pros and cons for all of them. And we have received some comments on the draft report. The Emeryville Planning Commission thought there should be a streetcar on San Pablo, which maybe there should, but it's not really quite the focus of this report. Since we mentioned demand response transit, they wanted to know more about it. It hasn't been a proven idea yet, but we'll say what there is. And they said we need a Trans-Bay bus through central Emeryville to downtown Berkeley, which we'll hear more about that in a minute. And then the Emeryville Transportation Management Association wants the report to more address funding for additional Emery go-round service, like they're thinking about adding a 4th route, but it's not really funded. Expansion of the West Berkeley shuttle and a possible West Oakland shuttle, so we're going to beef that up. Laura McCamey said that if you expand the Emery go-round on weekends, that could connect residents to BART without doing as much as some of the things we're thinking about. So that might be a way that the ETMA could expand their shuttle. Andre Carpio pointed out that rails in the streets cause problems, and he said rail lines should only be underground or above ground, which of course we can't afford to do. It is a point against rails. We have in the report some design ideas for how to minimize the problems that rails cause, like bike tires getting caught in them and things like that. And then John Schurman had the idea of adding a Transbay bus through central Emeryville from downtown Berkeley through Ashby BART and then down Stanford and Powell to the public market and to the towers and then across the bridge. Because if we had that, we wouldn't have to go to a BART station to get to San Francisco. Okay. I promised to tell you about the comments people made.
Thank you.
Can I have the lamp, please?
A lamp? What?
Take the lens cap off.
Okay, so we talked about the Planning Commission. We talked about the Planning Commission, the Transportation Management Association, Laura McCamey, and Andre Carpio. And I also wanted to talk about here we go. John Schurman's comments. So one thing he's saying we should do is to route the Emeryville streetcar through the Sherwin-Williams site. This is not something that staff thinks is a great idea because it could interfere with them meeting their open space requirement, but he thinks they're compatible. He would like Emeryville to acknowledge that Emeryville can also use a streetcar because their economic development could use a boost too. That we should work with the marketplace developers to create a true transit hub. AC Transit wants to have a transit hub at the marketplace, so we need to work with them on how to design that. He doesn't think we should focus on the Hollis Street bus, but that we should focus on the streetcar, and that we should add a Transbay bus from downtown Berkeley through central Emeryville. So that's that. So
Do you want to go back to the PowerPoint?
this is the only one, that's all right. So what I need to know is, from you, do the short-term improvements make sense? Expanding the shuttles, AC Transit's potential changes and our comments on them, demand response transit for late night service. Would the trunk line connector and enhanced bus be useful? Is this the right route for it, the right features? What do you think of the streetcars, Emeryville and West Oakland? Are those the right routes and the right features? The features would pretty much, service hours and all that would be the same as the bus. And what local funding sources and operator types make sense in the short and long term? So that completes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, and then I would like to hear what you have to say.
Comments from council? Do we want to start there or hear from the public first?
I have a quick clarifying question or
yeah.
comment, which is in the study when they looked at the percentage of low-income residents near these proposed routes, they used the 200% of the federal poverty level. And I'm more familiar from our affordable housing work here as an expression of the area median income. And it seemed that this federal poverty level is extremely low compared to actually the area median income for a family of 4 here. And I assume then these numbers would be very different if they use that different measure. Do you have any sense of I mean, maybe because it's federal funding, they're looking at the federal poverty level. But when we talk about low-income housing, if you qualify, it's the $93,000 a year for a family of 4 is the AMI. This mentioned $43,000 a year, I think, is the limit.
Well, if we use that, we might get, the number we get is a pretty meaningful number. I don't know what the traditions are and what the federal rules are, but I have heard people talk about the 200% of poverty level before as a way to measure the neighborhoods.
It's just a national measure, and we all know that the Bay Area costs a lot more to live in than...
That's why we use 200%.
Oh, that is only for the Bay Area, is the 200%?
I think so. The people in the Bay Area tend to use 200% because the costs are so high here.
Okay. Any other council members have experience with that or know the other measures? Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Nora?
Diana, would you put this on the screen again? I need a clarification here. On your, the fourth...
The mic, move the mic.
Oh, the fourth bullet where it says, eliminate the Emeryville to BART connections for service to San Francisco. What exactly does this mean?
Now, this is John Schuerman's comments.
Oh, it's John Sherman's comment. Okay.
And what I think he means is that you would not have to take Emeryville to BART in order to go to San Francisco.
Well, I get a little nervous when I
You
see
see words like, I would
eliminates the
I would never use
Emeryville.
that word in a report.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
Other clarifying questions?
I just have one question about West Oakland. I attended a meeting about 6 months ago, and they're trying to do an on-demand system in West Oakland. I think it's called Bisbee or Biz or
B.
Metro. Or
Metro
next,
B, right.
Metro B.
I've
what's
seen
the status of that
presentation.
within this plan?
As far as I know, there is a person, whose name I should remember, who is giving this presentation to everyone who will listen to him. He has an idea, he's a software expert, he wants somebody to fund it.
Okay.
And he gave a presentation. I had 2 people on the EBOTS pack that requested him to present, so I had him present. And then we have a member of the pack who's really a demand response transit fan, and he wants us to put something in there about it. As far as I know, that's all there is.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, that was 6 months ago when I heard the presentation, so.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to happen any minute.
Well, it did. Well, it did. It happened. It's Spoon Rocket. Deliver food instead of picking you up.
We are keeping it in there.
too, Spin Rocket?
No,
It's the same. It's the same software. It's the same.
maybe someone will fund it and it will take off.
Food in 10 minutes. Pick you up in 8.
Other comments? Should we hear from the public? No. Any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Yeah, come forward.
Somebody timing?
Good evening. My name is Neil Sinclair. I'm a resident of Emeryville. Coincidentally, I'm also the chairman of a company that is commercializing a Department of Energy new transit technology. And so I happened to run into Councilmember West at an art show.
Great art show it was, huh?
My fiance sold a painting.
It was a beautiful
It was
painting.
a great art show. So I did take a look at the study online, and I think it's a pretty good study. I mean, it's got what I would regard as all the essential information there. In general, my company, we have a public-private partnership with the city of Richmond, and we're located on the UC Berkeley property there. We also have a partnership with the city of Davis. And the good news, I guess the bad news first. The bad news is that they're probably right that it's 10 to 20 years trying to do conventional financing for a streetcar. I think the annualizing the cost is a good way to do it. Bond interest rates are pretty low these days, so not that you should go into debt. But I think that's, I think the study's covered a lot of the ground as far as legislation. And the one comment I would make is that the purpose of my company's efforts in the technology was to reduce the capital cost of public transit, rail transit. That's its purpose. And so Bart's done a study on us, and so have a number of engineering groups. So we have a program to move forward with Richmond. It's all dependent upon financing. We're talking to big companies in China right now about financing. So I don't want to sound like it's pie in the sky or anything like that. I think in the next 24 months we will probably have a working prototype full scale in Richmond at the site. It is a 10,000 pound vehicle, which is compared to 100,000 pounds. So it's a very lightweight vehicle, so you can elevate it. It's counterintuitive in the industry, but this one you can elevate without very much additional cost. So we're talking something in the range of $20, $25 million a mile is the capital cost on this. It is on demand. It's demand responsive. And so I didn't come here to give you a spiel on that. We call it Cybertran. If you're curious, you can look at the website. It's cybertran.com. Cybernetic transportation, cybertran.com. And I'm hoping to meet Councilmember West at some point after the elections and, provide a briefing on what we're doing. And you can come to Richmond and see the vehicle. And it gives you, the whole thing is the vehicle, really. It's a unique system. So I just wanted to share that with you. I think the information that's in the study is pretty good as far as evaluating legislation and costs. And I don't know Emeryville enough to know the short-term goals.
Yeah, thank you. Time's up. Thank you. Anyone else to speak on this item?
Hi, I'm Bobby Lee. I'm a resident over at Bay Street. Just two quick questions. Well, actually, first, I attended some of the workshops that we had on EBOTS, and very excited to see the draft report finally come through. I'm just wondering, with BART and their new late-night bus service that they're sponsoring, how does that factor in with everything here? It sounds like that kind of came after all this happened. So how does that change things? And also, with bike share kind of still being up in the air, how many bikes we're going to get in Emeryville, what does that fall into this as well?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Anyone else? No? Can we have staff address those questions? The late night BART, I believe that did come after, right? I mean, that's very recent, that development, right?
Right. So it's probably unrelated.
Yeah, but anything about bike share?
All I can say is we can look into it and put something in the report about it.
Okay.
But I think late night bus service and bike share are kind of different things than what this study is addressing.
I agree.
In terms of, a streetcar or a connector bus or whatever. It's just, it's great to have all these different alternatives, but it is a different topic, really.
We can add them to the context.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, from council? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a few other questions for staff, and just to kind of about the process. First of all, I'm glad to receive this report and see things moving forward. When we first talked about it at our transportation committee meeting, I hadn't had the opportunity to read it yet, and I just appreciate the depth that's in there more than I knew previously. So I'm glad about that. My first question is how you could characterize both the City of Berkeley and the City of Oakland's engagement in the study, like the decision makers. I feel like we're taking this pretty seriously. It's important to Emeryville, and I haven't had a chance to interact with my colleagues in Berkeley or Oakland on this particularly, and I'm curious if you could characterize that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we went to the Berkeley Transportation Commission, and they pretty much endorsed the recommendations, and it's on the consent calendar for Thursday at the council. Oakland, it's a bigger city, so we've taken it to their Community and Economic Development Committee for comments. They didn't really comment much. They just asked a few questions. And let's see.
Isn't it on the council agenda for November?
It is on the
first
council
meeting
agenda.
For Oakland?
November 18th.
November 18th. And that it's going to be it was on the Planning Commission. I went to the Planning Commission, and I got a lot of good comments from the Planning Commission, both about the process and about what should be in the report. And then we're going to be having a community meeting in West Oakland at the Senior Center because there's not really time for it to be a big hearing at the other meetings. So hopefully we'll get all our input before
And there are a number of
council.
separate groups in West Oakland that the Oakland staff person that we're working with suggested we meet with. And rather than have, 8 different meetings with all these various groups, we decided it would be most efficient to just have basically a community meeting and invite all of those groups to it.
So we
that's
sent
November
postcards
8th,
out to
right?
the community meeting, and then I'm also making personal invitations to people from the West Oakland Specific Plan Steering Committee.
Great. Good. Yeah, it seems that West Oakland really from this report has a lot to gain from these possibilities, which brings me to my next question, which is a concern about displacement and adequate value capture. Just any development changes the economics of an area, and Emeryville has seen a lot of development already, but I'm just concerned about low-income residents being displaced whenever we look at this.
I don't know if we haven't reached those people yet, but I haven't heard anything about it so far, that people are worried about gentrification or displacement or anything.
Well, I think there are organizations that are looking into that carefully. I don't know if it's individuals or organizations that we might want to make sure are part of the conversation as well to get that perspective. I was just surprised that the report, I think it mentioned it, but not significantly.
This project implements the West Oakland Specific Plan, which went through a big process.
So maybe it's already been discussed
adopted
there.
Almost unanimously.
Yeah.
So the same people that didn't like the West Oakland Specific Plan might not like this, but I haven't heard from them.
Okay.
We'll see.
And I think you answered one of my other questions in your presentation, which is why the different timelines, short-term, medium-term, long-term, which, as you stated, we can put streetcars in place in 20 years if we start now.
Right.
So it wasn't something to do with a magical time in the future. It's just that that's how long it takes to get the
Well, actually, there's two factors. One is that it takes that long to do it, and the other is that what makes streetcar, other than the fact that it has tracks, you can make a bus that has most of the features that streetcars have, except that if things develop the way the ABAG sees and the way the West Oakland Specific Plan sees and the way Emeryville General Plan sees, it could be that we'll actually start appreciating the throughput capacity of streetcars by then. Because streetcars are bigger and they can push more people through. Right now, we don't really think that way, but, and also if we get mode shift, so we get more people riding transit, then it could be that we'll really want streetcar by then.
Yeah. There wasn't a mention specifically about cap and trade funds in the funding section, the greenhouse gas reduction funds. And I'm just curious why, was that left out deliberately, or is it too unknown? I'm not familiar enough with all of the details, and I know it doesn't go on forever, right? It's a shorter period of time.
It's developing as we speak, and probably any of it happened after our sub-consultant wrote their report, so we should update.
Okay, that'd be great to see what that could be as well. And was there conversation about having that trunk line connector be a streetcar and not a bus? What was the decision? Is it because it's a longer line that you needed lower cost to make it feasible, or why is one looked at as a streetcar and the other as a bus?
So in other words, why not eventually make that route a streetcar?
Right, and could that be an eventual, plan?
It is more miles, so it would cost more, but that's a good question. I should ask the consultants why they recommended it that way. Do
Well,
we have any other reasons?
Well, just anecdotally, I believe that the Berkeley Transportation Commission, when Diana went and presented to them, felt that a streetcar was not economically feasible in West Berkeley.
They said the density in Berkeley is in downtown, and if you look at their plans, they don't really project a lot of density in Berkeley.
The plan pretty much reflects the desires of the different stakeholders and participants in the plan, and of course the 3 cities were significant participants. As Diana said, it implements the West Oakland Specific Plan, which already calls for a streetcar, and in West Berkeley they don't really seem to want one that much, and of course we know we want one in Emeryville, so we've got streetcars in Emeryville and Oakland and a bus in Berkeley.
They do want bus service up to Gilman, though.
So that's really helpful, because I didn't know if that came from the consultants or if that comes from the stakeholders, and understanding that the report is, expression of all of the comments that they've heard. Just that transparency is very helpful.
If you look at the inside of the front cover of the report, you can see a list of all the people who participated, and it's a pretty long list.
Yeah.
It is. Good. And then finally, the role for MTC or some other regional entity, if it's BART or AC Transit, in these conversations, since I know BART and AC Transit serve on the TAC, is this something that they're open to? It's mentioned that it's a possibility that they might be the agency that would put this in place. What kind of, how does that fit with their priorities?
I haven't heard AC Transit or BART say we would or would not want to run this. I have heard other people say it should be an AC Transit line, or it should be an association, PBID kind of thing. There's people I've heard equally. At the PAC meeting I asked that, and it was no help because they were split.
I don't know about any similar service that's run by BART. I believe BART does have some buses somewhere out in the hinterlands to feed to BART lines. But AC Transit does run the Broadway shuttle for the city of Oakland. That's not well known, and their name is not on the bus, but they do operate it. And the AC Transit people who are on the technical advisory committee have basically said, sure, pay us, we'll run it.
Yeah.
I just wonder if that's something that could happen more rapidly. If there's an entity, creating a JPA, it seems like that's 2 years right there, And if you have an existing entity that could make something like this happen, or that, they're doing BRT on International Boulevard now, and having other experience under their belt. So. And
there's sort of two different questions. One is people are saying, we don't have service here, we need a bus here in some places like Northwest Berkeley, and between West Oakland, BART, and here. And AC Transit is now doing their big outreach. And I was at a workshop Saturday, and they put maps out, and they had ribbons, and they asked people, where should the buses go? They didn't show their comprehensive operations analysis recommendations. They just said, people, what do you want? And the people put ribbons where we're thinking about having our thing. So maybe, who knows, but their comprehensive operations analysis, well, there was an existing route there, so they didn't analyze it. But maybe it'll evolve into there, I don't know.
Well, and it's nice if our study did help them to figure out the need and help serve Emeryville better, even in the short term.
And of course, this was similar to what the 19 was, the bus that they ran for a while, and then when they had to cut service, they cut it because it didn't have ridership. Yeah. There are some differences. There's some development happening around Gilman now, and it's not exactly the same. It doesn't have the same duplication that the 19 had in some places, so there's some reasons why it might work now when it didn't work before.
But part of it's marketing, perhaps, like you mentioned earlier as well. Great. Well, I think those are all my comments for now. Thank you very much.
Comments and questions?
Yeah, I have some comments. First of all, a general comment. It is great to see this plan kind of take shape in some of the finer grain and detail than when we first saw it, and that there is so much attention west of San Pablo. And I think it's a recognition of the demographic and economic changes that have happened west of San Pablo. So first of all, just a general positive yay. And then in terms of your particular questions, because we haven't really talked about each of these, the Emeryville people who are streetcar proponents maybe intuitively guessed that the streetcar approach would mostly benefit, would have the greatest benefit in Emeryville. So I found that interesting in terms of the ridership and the reduction of vehicle miles traveled and whatnot. So according to if you can trust the projections and the analysis in the study, then I think that's something that we need to keep our eyes on the prize around a long-range vision towards that. For some of the reasons that you said, Diana, which is that they carry more people than buses, and even articulated buses. And in my experience, there's nothing like rails that bring people out more than even fancy buses. And so I think that in and of itself is an incentive to get people out of other modes of travel. The description of the trunk line connector bus is a good one in terms of wanting to hit activity centers and maybe the Berkeley Amtrak station, and it doesn't really, it bypasses ours by a block or something. But I would want it to connect to the Amtrak stations as well as to West Oakland BART and Jack London Square. So I think that idea is sound. I'm not exactly sure if the route would be tweaked, especially at the northern terminus and going through Emeryville. I do think about a Transbay service for the existing F line. There was some talk in the study about widening the I-80 off ramps to accommodate the F bus, but that's not exactly where people are. So I'd actually like to see the F stop where we have residential density, not at an off ramp. That makes no sense to me. And staff knows every time I talk about the traffic impact fee study, I naysay about widening the I-80 off ramp, but that's not a good place to put a bus stop. We have to put bus stop where people live or where. So anyway, I think the discussion about changing the F really is still missing what Emeryville needs in terms of a Transbay bus service. The other thing, I can't speak for what West Oakland wants or doesn't want, but with Mandela Parkway having been redone now, that's a wonderful spine for them to build upon and to cluster all sorts of exciting, vibrant things along Mandela. But I can't really speak for them. I don't want to speak for them, but I would say, go forth and do whatever they want in terms of what they figured out. But I do know that if tracks were laid there, that would be a magnet for increasing economic activity there. And there's some efforts already at some housing on Covent or something along Mandela, and that would probably be enhanced both towards the Best Buy end of Mandela and then also closer to the West Oakland BART station. So I think the more connections we have to Amtrak stations and BART stations, the better. And so if this trunk line moves forward, I see basic tweaks to the route to accommodate all of the intermodal connections that could be made. And the other thing, borrowing from verbiage from our general plan about having a fine-grained city, it's like now we're beginning to have a fine-grained transportation system, and that's very exciting to me. I will give a nod to former council member Bukowski, who once described transportation as akin to the circulatory system of the human body, and that you have major arterials, you have veins who are kind of collector streets, and then you have the side streets who are the capillaries of the system. And if the arteries get clogged, then the veins have to pick up more of the load. And so I'm a really bad poet, but I think kind of this metaphor of trying to have all these different kind of connections, the shuttles being kind of the capillaries of the system in a way, and the trunk line. I think all of this makes sense. So I'm really pleased to see this study. And just in terms of funding, this is going to take a consistency of vision that's going to span many different councils and many different regional and local tax measures to try to make this happen. And the other thing is, if congressionally directed appropriations ever comes back, AKA earmarks, this is something that I think as a startup funds, we could be in a good position to go for federal funding. But it's going to be tough to piece all the funding for all of this together. And as so happens in the public realm, people pick the low-hanging fruit to make some changes. So I guess what I would say about short and long term is, let's go for the low-hanging fruit, because we'll be able to make some changes even if we can't get the whole caboodle at the moment. So those are my rambling comments.
I just have a few things.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, I just have to remind people that it was a little bit over 20 years ago that we built the Powell Street Bridge. And so things take a long time, but you have to have vision. And you have to be consistent with your vision as far as what the future is going to be. And we know what the future of this area is going to be. There's going to be a lot more people here. There's going to be a lot more industry, and so transportation is going to be a priority. And really the thing I liked about this report is that we're talking to other cities, and we're talking to AC Transit, we're talking to BART, because it's a problem that everybody has. And for this conversation to continue, I think it's important. And I also think it's important to do it in phases that, based upon what the plan is. And then let's celebrate in 20 years when we have streetcars back in Emeryville, because if we all have focus and we focus on that, those things will happen, because really we have no choice. And the opportunity in the Bay Area, the way I see it, is, especially in the East Bay, is in West Oakland. It's going to, eventually it's going to pop, and when that pops, there's going to be a lot more people here, and that those people, we have to get them out of their cars, and so this is a great plan. So I take my hat off to everybody that put their time and effort into the plan.
Go ahead, Jack.
I really just want to co-sign on most of that. And although I do want to say, in terms of the short-term improvements, the demand response transit for late night, including that, that's not something I was particularly supportive of. I think the model that was shared with us through Metro B relies on people having a particular level of wealth and access and a phone in order to be able to use that service. And just looking at our demographics and the low-income communities that we're working with and trying to support, I don't really see that as a way forward, and would like to see maybe a different solution for late night. I too am looking forward to streetcars. I want what we can get now in order to improve our transit options, and I've heard from a lot of residents that they would like a shuttle connection to West Oakland BART, and so that's something that I'm supportive of. But ultimately, for me, I think that is the goal for me, is to see streetcars.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Asher. First, I want to thank Diana. I don't think anybody here understands what a monumental undertaking this was. It was like trying to herd cats. Number one, you're dealing with a lot of different jurisdictions, a lot of different transit entities, and then there's the issue of trying to get people out to talk about transit. This was a huge job, and I will publicly want to congratulate her on what she's done here. This draft report on the transit study is, as Kurt suggested, it's going to give us a basis to work from. We've got a lot of information packed into these pages that is going to help us in the future. Some of it I believe to be irrelevant, some of it I believe to be flawed, but on the whole, the package will be useful for us to work with. On the short-term improvements, this is one of my problems here. Any of these improvements made by AC Transit could have been done by AC Transit without the input. The flexibility of these short-term improvements is, if they don't work, we can change them. It's a little different than the streetcar, which we'll get to later. The trunk line connector is kind of like the whipped cream on the cake. It's not clear to me that it really pays off. And what do I think of streetcar? I join the rest of the council here saying that I believe streetcars in the East Bay, especially this inner East Bay, is absolutely the future. And we've got to start now if we're going to crank this in. We've seen the successes of the streetcar lines in Seattle and in Portland. Right. We know they work. We know you can go into an area that, I'll use West Berkeley as an example, that is absolutely underutilized. It's not the highest and best use. West Oakland has not come up to the highest and best use. You put these streetcar lines in there and you see a change. And I think I would like to see us, when this study comes out, put more of a focus on the streetcars. I'm not a big favorite of the O streetcar concept. I think that's an O to nowhere. And I believe to get this streetcar concept off the ground, we have to kind of ignore Berkeley, because clearly they have not come to the point in time where they understand the future, and the future is a streetcar line going up past Gilman, up north, connecting up with the Neil Sinclair and Richmond streetcar line. Now, it sounds like a joke, but this is going to be the future, and I would hope that the study would put a little more emphasis on the streetcars. And I'd just like to put in a pitch for a more modest proposal than the O proposal, and that would be a streetcar going from the Emeryville border down to the West Oakland BART, because it's already got density. It's going to, as Kurt says, West Oakland is going to pop. That density is going to pop. The thing is, you start with a small segment. I sound like Jerry Brown now, right? Bakersfield to Madeira.
This is a high-speed
This is a
streetcar?
different thing. And I would like to see that some of that those ideas reflected in this report, because if you start with a segment that works and is absolutely successful, and I'll give you an example of how this happened in Emeryville. When we started the Emery-go-round, we had a very low projection. What are we up to now? Over 1 million riders a year in a 1 square mile town. Come on, folks. This is where we can start. You get it started, it's successful, then you go out to the feds and say, here's a project that has worked, we want to take it all the way up. So that's, and on the funding, you have to have the vision first, you have to have the political will, you have to be consistent with the political will. So they're my comments. Thank you for bearing with me.
Ruth had one more thing.
I just wanted to put in a little end cap, a historical note on our desire for streetcars, which is that the prior assembly member, I think, well, anyway, it was during the period when Dion Arner was our representative in the state assembly, and they were discussing putting streetcars back on San Pablo Avenue. And because of, so this goes back a ways, and there was probably a pragmatic decision. I'm not sure how much politics played into it, but there was certainly pragmatic in terms of cost, to not do a streetcar because of the capital outlay of tracks, but and the recognition that buses are by nature more flexible and you can just change routes around. But that was the impetus for the rapid bus, the 72. And so it's interesting, Emeryville's leading the charge to bring back streetcars. This was a battle that was lost when that led to the rapid buses. So anyway, I just want to say that it takes perseverance and it takes a champion to realize that. But I just wanted to let people know kind of the history of how the Rapid bus, the 72 Rapid, came into being. And that concept is now being expanded with BRT along International Boulevard, Telegraph in Berkeley and Oakland. So anyway, again, those are less expensive ways to try to achieve some of the same transit goals. We'll see if it actually results in more of a mode shift.
I just want to follow up on what you said. I take the 72 quite a bit because it goes straight to my work. And if you haven't taken the 72 lately, you really should because it's convenient, it's fast. You know, I rarely have to wait more than 5 minutes for a bus, and that's as it should be. And in a way, when you get good bus transit like that, you have less of an impetus to put a streetcar in place. And so you kind of, it's tricky. And I think that's where Nora Davis's comments earlier were, do the streetcar right now, so that you will fulfill that need and shoot a little higher, perhaps. But I just want to give a shout out for the 72.
Oh, it's a great line.
It is. It's very useful.
Okay, thank you. And with that, the study session is now adjourned. We already had public comment on the item. Okay.
Thank you, Diana.
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you, Diana.
I hope you found it engrossing.
Good job.
Okay, we're now moving